Merry Christmas, everybody. It's time to deck the halls with some nuclear fallout in this year's DC holiday special, the Nuclear Winter Special. So it's got 10 cataclysmic stories, and we're going to go through each and every one of them. So buckle up and hang on for the ride. DC's Nuclear Winter Special is 10 different stories in one collected volume, and each of these stories has a little bit of a heartwarming tale to it. The beginning of the whole book is a story focusing on Rip Hunter getting trapped in a post-apocalyptic future with 3 cannibalistic humans that are just wanting to eat him. And in order to distract them from eating him, he decides to tell them stories of the superheroes of, the old times, but in a new way that has them actually in post-apocalyptic futures as well. The first one that he tells a story about is Damian Wayne as Batman. If you haven't read the Damian Wayne story as Batman, go ahead and read the story arc titled Damian, Son of Batman. We get to see a brand new take on what Batman could be. It's got a really cool costume design going with more of a noir style, and it's just really cool to see Damian as Batman rather than just Robin or some little bitchy sidekick. So this story picks up after the end of the world. Damian is one of the last few surviving people, and during the course of this, it's revealed that he sold his soul to the devil for everlasting life, essentially. And during a moment where he's reminiscing about the Christmases of old, he's attacked by his grandfather, Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, or however you want to pronounce it, who is insistent that one of them will kill the other before the end of the fight. And when Damian refuses to kill Ra's tries to kill him. And when, of course, Damian can't die because he is, immortal, Ra's and Damian end up sharing a tender moment. They sit by the fire and just enjoy the holiday as a family. It's a warm moment to see. This story is actually titled Warmth. The next story in the anthology is focusing on Superman of the 853rd century, which is Cal Kent. We see him landing on Mars to interact with John Jones. He is now basically Mars. We see that he spent some time fighting King Cosmos, who ended up sending himself back in time to the 21st century to fight and kill young Clark Kent while he was still a child before he actually manifested his powers. Luckily for Clark, as well as Cal Kent, there is a familiar face in the face of John Jones, who has been living in the 21st century as kind of a way to protect Superman before he was able to defend himself. We then see a moment where John Jones is sharing his memories with his daughter back on Mars on the day called Memory Hearth. And for the Martians, Memory Hearth is the same day as Christmas. And it's sad to see that John's family is, passed, and we hear that there was a lot that he wanted to share with his family on this day, years later after they've died. And we do see that Cal Kent made his way back to the 21st century, and he decides to do what Superman should do. And he brings John a memory back so that John can enjoy his memory hearth again, seeing the memories of his daughter. And again, that is just, to me, that's what Superman should be, is just a very tender character that cares for everyone regardless of where they're from or what their story is. The next story is focusing on the Flash. The title of his story is Once and Future. He ends up getting trapped in the Speed Force that's been poisoned by a team-up of Vandal Savage, Ares, Brainiac, and Morgana Le Fay. Now, the entire Justice League is getting wrecked, and as Flash goes to help, he is attacked by the Reverse Flash, who teams up with Morgana to poison the Speed Force. The Flash gets trapped inside of it, and he is trying as hard as he can to get out, but he can't. He can never get back to where he belongs. And he watches as Iris weeps for him as he's lost in the Speed Force. And then he moves forward in time a little bit and sees the new Justice League, Wally has stepped up to take his place. We see that later on, Iris has married, and Barry is okay with it. Barry is happy to see that everyone is moving on with their lives, and so he decides to move on to his next adventure, and the reader is left to interpret what they think it might be. After hearing these first few stories, the cannibals start to have emotional changes. One of the cannibals says, "I consider you a friend," to Rip, and Rip is getting falsely emotional as he thinks about the season. And all of the cannibals start to think about it too and realize that there were better times for them as well. And we see a couple of memories from one or two of the cannibals. One remembers opening presents on Christmas Day, and another remembers the office parties that they used to attend. And as they began to reminisce, Rip begins his next story. A story about Aquaman, one of the most mocked characters of all time, and he ends up becoming the only person on the entire planet that can save it. He is met by a couple of scientists who tell him of a special kind of bacteria at the bottom of the ocean that feeds on radioactivity. Aquaman has not been in the ocean since the bombs dropped and ended up killing 90% of the population in the ocean. The Atlanteans were completely obliterated, and all that's left in the ocean are these mutated bastardizations of the animals that he once was able to communicate with. But now there is not enough brain amongst the animal population for him to communicate with. So he ends up having to kill two-headed sharks, multi-eyed sharks, just all kinds of animals that are, for lack of better purposes, just monsters. And as he arrives at the bottom of the sea, he finds this glowing bacteria that he was told about. He laughs because this is the thing that will save the world. And as he leaves the trench that he found the bacteria in, he sees a shark, just a normal, regular shark. And that brings him joy because he knows that there's still some left. There's still some of the normal creatures left in the world. Next, we're treated to a masked woman who comes across a destroyed caravan. In the middle of this caravan is a young girl crying. She's maybe 3 or 4, very young, and all alone. The woman found Lucy and took her. She's her responsibility now. And for 2 years, they made their way to Denali, Alaska, to climb the tallest mountain in North America. The journey is hard, and our heroine begins to show signs of wear and tear. Meanwhile, Lucy is getting stronger every day. Lucy is offering to help. She's trying to help her new mother to reach the top. And when they reach the top, everything's going to be better. As they reach the top, our heroine collapses, exhausted, dying. She doesn't have the strength to go on. And then through the clouds, a small break of sunlight reaches them. And as that sunlight hits our heroine, she rips off her shirt, and it's revealed that she is Supergirl. She feels her strength returning to her. She takes Lucy to the top of the mountain, and they take off, heading down towards the Fortress of Solitude. As Supergirl opens the Fortress of Solitude, it's shown that there is still a pod that Kal-El left there years ago. Her and Lucy climb into the pod, and they race off to the next world to start a new life in a world that hasn't been destroyed by nuclear war. The title of that story was Last Daughters, and I think it was a really beautiful way to see Supergirl that despite everything, despite all of her strength, without the sun, without some beam of light in her life, she was just as downtrodden, just as worn out as everybody else. The next story we see is called Last Christmas, and it features Firestorm and the nuclear family. Firestorm is one of the more obscure characters. You may have seen him in the Arrowverse, but for the most part he's pretty obscure to those that don't really know a whole lot about the DC universe. He sensed a huge increase in a nuclear energy in the middle of an old destroyed theme park. As he arrives, he sees that the House of Tomorrow has been rebuilt, and inside of the home is the nuclear family. It consists of a mother, a father, and 3 children, and a dog. As Firestorm arrives, he comes in ready to fight, but the father of the nuclear family says, "We're not here to fight, we just want to enjoy the holidays." And then he reveals to Firestorm that their batteries are running out. And just like every other human race, android, everybody dies, and it's coming to their time. And as Firestorm and the father are speaking, one of the sons sneaks up behind Firestorm and locks on a nuclear band of some sort to his neck. As his energy is getting sapped, he decides to trick them and ends up blowing up a thing of cookies that the mother has created using chemical compounds in the cookie dough. As Firestorm manages to free himself, he goes up into the atmosphere and releases the excess energy that was pumped into his body by the nuclear family, and offers them a olive branch, so to speak. He brings out some grape juice and turns it into brandy for them because he can do that. And as they all decide to share their drink, all 5 of the family members end up shutting down. Their batteries die simultaneously, and Firestorm flies off into the night knowing that they may have died, but they died together. After we finish up with Firestorm, we go back to Rip and the 3 hungry cannibals. And as they are sitting there talking with Rip, one of them reveals that he misses the bologna sandwiches his mother used to make for him. And now all he has is sandwiches. And Rip talks and tries to empathize with them. And one of the raiders named Phil decides to attack, saying that he knows better. He used to be a chief operating officer. He knows exactly what Rip's trying to do. As his 2 friends hold him back, Rip says, "You know what? You're absolutely right. You are too smart for this. But let's tell another story anyway." They go to Kamandi, the last boy on Earth. Kamandi, for those of you that have not heard of him, is kind of like Tarzan. A lot smarter than Tarzan, but along the same vein as Tarzan. He lives in a completely lost part of the world, and the dominant race appears to be bears. He ends up getting in a fight with a warrior bear that rules under the king bear. The king bear ends up saying, it's not worth it. Kamandi falls into a river, and he's rescued by a mama bear and her older cub. He's not really a cub anymore, he's more of an older cub. And the mother bear reveals that it's her son's duty and his fate to take over the throne from the evil king bear, because he was born in the year of the comet. Kamandi then reveals that he was also born in the year of the comet, so the bears and Kamandi share a thing. They head off to find the prophesied land of the singing stars, as Kamandi's grandfather always told him he should find. As they arrive, the Bear King arrives and attacks them. Kamandi says, "F this, we're going to fight back," and ends up knocking the king's helmet off, drawing blood. The Bear King then says that he's going to fight Kamandi one-on-one. As he does so, they make their way out on a very narrow cliff ledge, and Kamandi ends up breaking the bridge, kind of like Gandalf did, except Kamandi doesn't die. He is rescued by Tamir, the bear cub type guy, and pulls him back up, and they decide to go their separate ways. Kamandi continuing his journey to try and find where he belongs in his world. Next, we see Catwoman in Gotham City. Catwoman and her new ward, Sophie, are jumping from rooftop to rooftop, trying to get to the rations boxes that are being held in a delivery van. It's then revealed that there are several sectors in Gotham City that have been closed off to the starving, the sick, and the dying, because the government refuses to give them food. Selina's ward, Sophie, ends up giving part of her rations to a young family who has no food, much to the chagrin of Selina. Selina chastises her for giving up her food, stating that she could die. After the argument, Catwoman ends up going back to her old ways. She actually breaks out her old Catwoman suit and goes to steal a piece of fine Egyptian treasure. As she's doing so, she realizes that there are boxes and boxes of the rations kept in the museum that she's about to rob. So, as she fights off her attackers, she steals a trolley cart full of the rations, and then steals an entire van full of rations, bringing them back to her hideout and showing off to Sophie that they can still make a difference, despite the fact that there is nothing to go around. The next story we see is of the Justice League. At some point during the Justice League's tenure, the Green Arrow decides that he's had enough of the way the Justice League tries to operate and leaves. There is a huge falling out amongst the Justice League members and Green Arrow, and as we flash forward a few decades, we see that Green Arrow is alive, and other members of the Justice League are not so much. The new Justice League is made up of heroes that look familiar but turn out to be completely different people. And as the party is going on for the Justice League holiday party, Oliver and Hawkman end up having a discussion about times of old, as well as the new heroes that are taking over for the legendary heroes from before times. As Oliver and Carter argue, we see Diana, who is the Black Canary. The Black Canary and Oliver end up dancing for a while. They reminisce about the old times, and we meet Dinah's grandson. Dinah's grandson is bored. It's a party. It's lame. They don't want to be there. So they take him to the old hologram training facilities and show some of the old footage of when they would fight and the villains that they fought. And Oliver shows the grandson a time when the Black Canary single-handedly took down Despero, an alien warlord who decided that Earth was where he was going to conquer next. And it's revealed that Black Canary ended up taking him down single-handedly like a total badass. As Oliver and Dinah say their goodbyes, they end up, they tell each other how much they love each other and how much they mean to each other. As Black Canary leaves with her grandson, Carter and Oliver break into some alcohol, and they all have a happily ever after for the holidays. After this last story, the three cannibals decide that they've had enough. It's time to eat, and no more stories are going to distract them. Rip is going to die, they're going to eat him, but luckily for Rip, his time bubble has fully charged at this point, and he can just zap off back to the future of his own future. This is obviously a future, but you know what I'm trying to say. And as he leaves, he decides to do one good thing for these marauders who are obviously hungry. He throws a bologna sandwich out to the raider that was talking about the bologna sandwiches that he loved. As he flies away, we see the marauder Morgus crying with joy at the taste of a bologna sandwich. And he says, "God bless us, everyone." And we get a very special happy holidays from all of DC Comics. All in all, this was a very enjoyable story. I would say that my favorite of the stories in this collection is the Supergirl and the Last Daughters. But as a whole, this was just a very solidly done anthology, and DC really never misses with their holiday specials. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope y'all have a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever holiday you celebrate. I hope that you have an amazing time and a Happy New Year. And I'll see you guys all in the new year. In the meantime, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell so you get a ding every time something new is uploaded. And check out my other review videos as well as my Rakxm dub videos. But for now, guys, stay warm out there, get you some hot cocoa, and enjoy the time with your family. Merry Christmas, y'all.